Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me check my sound. This video is not going to be that long. This was not one that was going to be in my queue for this evening. But I saw it and I've heard this mentioned enough where I wanted to say something about it. So my sound looks good. Just to give a heads up, Jordan Sheridan is going to be on the show for an interview coming up within 2 weeks, week after next. And I'm trying to get, I've been speaking with Tim Canova, and hopefully he will be here next week. So those are the two announcements. You guys know I've been real strong on pushing back with the Russia hysteria in the United States and in Britain. The reason I've been strong about that, though, if there's been any confusion, has nothing to do with Vladimir Putin at all. It has everything to do with the argument itself and the consequences of what would take place if their argument is true, demanding loyal opposition, patriotic opposition. And that patriotic opposition has been coming from more quarters than just me, in this tiny corner of the web. It's been coming from various places, whether you want to talk about Jimmy, the Lion, Dore, or Glenn, the fucking Lion, Greenwald. It's been coming from multiple sources. The Real News Network, eating that guy alive who wrote the book on collusion. That's opposition. Cenk Uygur being eaten alive by Kyle Kulinski. That's opposition. That's loyal opposition. That is what you need. That has nothing to do, mind you, with Vladimir Putin. If I am given an argument, and that argument is telling me that what took place with Russian hacking, which ended up being Facebook and Twitter ads, was the testament to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, how am I supposed to take that? It is utterly an absurd argument. Now, if I point out that's an absurd argument, if I point out that we've done worse things around the globe, if I point out that the consequences of what you're saying demand that you nail down and prove what you're saying, that is not me loving Vladimir Putin. Putin has nothing at all to even do with that particular conversation. This is everything to do with you and your argument. Cenk Uygur and Ana Kasparian on their show have been MSNBC light all the way. The moment that Donald Trump got elected, they got their marching orders. They turned their network into essentially Democratic Central that's a little bit more rambunctious. And they've attacked Trump as assiduously as MSNBC and CNN and the other networks have attacked Donald Trump, giving Democrats somewhat of a pass. Now, here's the thing. They've pushed the Trump and Russia nonsense. And they've been frustrated that people have not just taken what they were saying as the word of God. And in their frustration, not being able to get their point across, not being able to get this thing over the finish line of this collusion or whatever, being dismantled completely by Cal, still sticking assiduously to this idea that Trump colluded with Russia or that Trump is a Russian robot, despite him being the worst Russian robot in the history of robots. He's given weapons to the Ukraine. He's given neo-Nazis weapons, and they're going to use those weapons to murder Russians. He's bombing in Syria, mind you. They have United States operations, France and the UK, but the United States is taking operations in Syria, even though they're allied with Russia. I'm making the point that this is not a Putin robot in the sense that these guys are making it. They have this illusion of what Trump is, and they've aligned their worldview up to this. He's passing those sanctions. He's going further in those sanctions than what he was passing in those sanctions before. Yes, he said he's going to get these troops out of Syria, but we don't know if he's going to get those troops out of Syria. And mind you, if he turns around and tries to undermine a deal with Iran, that would be another blow to the idea that Donald Trump is a Putin puppet because Russia is also allied with Iran. Your ideas of this make no sense. People are not insane for pointing out that what you're saying does not line up to objective reality, and yet they push it nonetheless. And in their frustration, not being able to get it over the finish line, Cenk Uygur and Ana muse over these lefties who seem to be Putin supporters. Let's take a look at the thing. I get annoyed by this because this is profoundly shallow. And even Cenk soft bomb, nerf bomb Uyghur, should be able to understand the difference between I am attacking your argument versus I am defending the object of what you're talking about. Those things are dramatically different. Let's take a listen to what they're saying. And again, shout out to the Dimitri Show for this. This is their clip. His link is at the bottom.
Yeah. He's friends with Trump, and he likes to fix our elections like he likes to fix his elections. But there's some progressives who still defend this guy.
What I want to know about those progressives is, did they defend him when he sent members of Pussy Riot to prison for 2 years because they had the audacity to protest at a Catholic church? Were you supportive of Putin back then?
Are you supportive of Putin when his allies run ads like this, creating demagoguery to rile up his base to hate others like gay people in the country? What part of this thug right-wing dictator do you enjoy as a progressive?
No, Cenk, let's immediately distract from the conversation by talking about everything that the U.S. does that we don't like, even though it's completely unrelated to this particular story. But let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and by the way, look, you can tell we're a little frustrated, but
just to make a point before they tumble down this ridiculous path, Vladimir Putin could be the worst person on the planet. He could get up in the morning, he could slap his mom, he could walk down, slap his wife, he could kick his dog, he could kick his baby, he could stick his thumb in the nose of the cab driver, he could cut one on an elevator, and then, being an autocrat, make the guy who's standing beside him take the blame for it. He could be a horrible fucking guy. What does that have to do with you not proving your case? Whatever he is, that's for Russia. That's not for us. The argument that we make to you has nothing to do with Vladimir Putin. The argument that we make to you is that you haven't proven your case. You're being impeached, not Vladimir Putin. He has nothing to do with it. If somebody makes a contextual argument to you saying that it seems that you're attributing justice in an unequal way, meaning you're using a different standard for one that you're using for somebody else. By the way, the United States has a lot of bad, horrible people that it works with. We're working with Saudi Arabia right now, murdering and starving Yemenis. So what is your point? We work with bad, horrible people. And by the way, even though we work with bad, horrible people, again, I make the point to you that whatever Putin is, however horrible Putin is, the argument that we're making to you has nothing to do with Vladimir Putin. It has everything to do with the failings of your argument and you not making your case. You guys dislike Trump. I get it. I understand. You guys have had your marching orders. I get it. I understand. You've contorted your network in a particular way, either through political ideology or whether you're in this thing resistance to Trump, whatever your reasoning. Fair enough. The problem here is, when dealing with certain lefties, whether you want Bador or Greenwald or myself, is that we ask you certain questions. And we say, you need to be able to nail down this thing, that this was Russia, that Russia hacked us, Russia did something to us, Russia is controlling Donald Trump in some way. And you haven't did that. Your frustration here trickles over into this thing of, oh, you guys are just supporting Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin hasn't come into this conversation. If we bring him into the conversation, it's because you're saying he's a bad guy, and we try to make the point to you that we interact with bad guys all the time. Our government is full of bad guys. Bad guys run the table. What's your point? He's a bad guy. What does that have to do with you proving your case? Whether that's Britain or whether that's here. Him being a bad guy has zero to do with anything. Him being a bad guy is an issue for Russia. It's an issue for Russia. In fact is, when somebody gives you a contextual understanding of international politics and you get annoyed by that, I don't like them giving me a larger understanding of international politics. That bothers me. That adversely affects the narrative and the story that I'm trying to run with. Come on. Certainly, you know this is a ridiculous argument, but let's let him keep going. Let's let him keep going. I want to let him finish. I don't want to undergut him.
About this issue. Again, Republicans, I understand. They would love a strong man like this that blames blacks and gays, etc. in this country for their problems. They would celebrate it. And so I understand their motivation completely. But if you're a progressive, you are allowed to do and think two things at once. You're allowed to say the US has done a lot of terrible things and we look forward to fixing them. And here's the policy position is to fix them. And at the same time say, hey, maybe Putin and this current Russian government doesn't have the best of intentions for its own people, for us, or for anyone else.
Yes, that's true. You can do that. We are doing that. Here's the difference. Coming to those conclusions does not mean that you also come to the conclusion that they hacked us, that this was 9/11, that they attacked us. Those things are different. Saying this is kind of my point. Saying he's a bad guy is not necessarily evidence of anything other than he's a bad guy. You're making an accusation saying that he did something to us, that he hacked us, he attacked us, he did something to us, that he's controlling the United States president, that he's doing all of these nefarious things around the world. And we are making the point to you that him being a bad guy is not evidence of that. We're looking for evidence. We're looking for objective evidence. And that's something that you lack. That's something that you lack. And by the way, the other part to that, and the reason that you hate that, the whataboutism, the reason that people bring up to you that, look, the same things that you're accusing Vladimir Putin of, we ourselves are doing. How are you trying to hold a different standard for Vladimir Putin that you're trying to apply for us? Now, your argument is, well, I mean, we're trying to get better at that. No, we're not. We're not. The people who you're going to vote for and support are not. I understand you're supporting these people during the primaries, but if these people don't win, you're just going to turn around and support the Democrats. Let's be honest. You supported Hillary Clinton. You supported Hillary Clinton. I guess I'm just making a point to you. If one is doing it, how on earth are you using a different scale in your judgment of somebody else? How? You call this whataboutism. You're shocked that people bring this up. Context. How dare you bring up context into this conversation? We accept that Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. We accept that our country has done some horrible, heinous things. We accept that many of these actors are bad actors. That's the difference. We accept all of it. We have the contextual understanding that all of these things. So we don't have this knee-jerk, fly-off-the-handle hysterical reaction when something like this happens. Because governments do these things. And for a government that have just destroyed another government, it's a little weird. It's a little bizarre to fly off the handle in the way that many of you have been flying off the handle. Your hatred of context in this is only because that hurts and undercuts the argument that you're making. Yes, we understand that Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. Yes, agreed. Fully agree. He doesn't wash his hands when he makes people sandwiches. I get it. He's an autocrat. Autocrats tend to be bad guys. And by the way, Vladimir Putin is using the political apparatus in the country to which he founded. And in the same way that our politicians use the political apparatus to which they find it. It's just so happened that's an autocratic system. I don't care what that system is. I have nothing to do with the system. That's for them to deal with. In the same way that the affairs of the United States are mine to deal with. And if somebody is in this country and they're supposedly deeply progressive, and yet the tenor that they take is this kind of escalation of sorts, or seems to be pushing for some level of escalation, whatever that level is, then yeah, we're against that person. Not because we're for Vladimir Putin, but because we don't necessarily want our country positioned in a particular way without there being just cause for doing so. Bringing up Vladimir Putin is a massive straw man. It's not even a good straw man. It's not even a good straw man. It shows the weakness in your argument. I understand you're frustrated because people aren't taking your narrative. Oh, they're not taking our narrative. Yeah, that's great. Maybe if you had a better narrative. Maybe if the narrative was a bit stronger. Maybe if we weren't also doing the same thing. Maybe if we weren't also doing the same thing. Yes, lefties, we look at this from a contextual standpoint. We look at this from an honest standpoint of what are we doing? What are we also doing? Can we get uptight? Can we lose it? What degree can we lose it knowing that we are also doing similar things? It's not giving Putin a pass. It's not at all. It's acknowledging that we're doing bad shit also. And how on earth do you allow one to pass and then flip out with the other? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Yes, Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. That has nothing to do with your point. Prove your point. Prove your point. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to let this one drag on. Let them finish. I mean, they have a little bit more. But you get their point. I'm putting the video at the bottom. I don't need to show the entirety of the video. This is them whining about why people are not just buying the Russiagate narrative. And how dare these lefties contest our narrative with data and information and questions. How dare they? Vladimir Putin is such a bad, bad guy. They should just jump on our narrative. As if him being such a bad, bad guy automatically just makes him guilty. For whatever reason, they seem to have this thought that him being a bad guy necessitates him being guilty. And necessitates you just buying into this idea of him being guilty. This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. The video is at the bottom. I'm not going to keep this one too long. Let's see if anyone is here first before I cut this one shut. What about Anna and Twitter the other day saying folks' issues with censorship on YouTube are being blown out of proportion? They are MSNBC light. That's what I've said. They're MSNBC light. I'm not shocked by this. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if you look at TYT now, the main show, they look like MSNBC, slightly rowdier. Don't take my word for it. Look at that thing. I'm just saying. Elephants on coke, exactly. Putin is a run-of-the-mill nationalist strongman. The wild part about this is the argument of, yeah, they always bring up some of the stuff that we're doing. That's called context. It's called context. Your level of hysteria and your level of flipping out needs to be leveraged against how you yourself behave in the world. It is very strange to say that this guy is doing this. We're also doing the same thing, but we're going to lose it over that. That's bizarre. That's a bizarre way to look at the world, especially if you're deeply progressive and you're trying to keep a certain level of integrity about the way you look at the world. In fact, I don't understand this thing of how are you paying attention to international politics and not taking into account the things that world actors do. You understand that the behavior of nations, the things that Russia does, the thing that North Korea does, it's not magic. They do those things oftentimes in response to other nations. It is impossible to talk about international politics without talking about the role of the United States or Britain or other nations. What are you talking about on the show? What are you talking about on this show? I mean, this is insane and ridiculous argument. I don't even know if it's an argument. I can't even say it's an argument. It's much more of just a smear. I don't like you guys not taking our word of God, so I'm just going to say that you guys are working with Vladimir Putin if you're on the left. Come on. Their video's at the bottom. You guys can see it for yourself. It's ridiculous. They have 20 million reasons not to. I wasn't going to say that. Because honestly, at this point, I just think they're Democrats. I just think it's kind of like a Rachel Maddow thing, where with the difference being a bit rowdier. Like, I'll bitch and I'll moan and I'll complain and everything else, but at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you to vote for Hillary Clinton. And Anna's going to be like, how about you agree with me, Anna? Yeah, I agree with you, Jake. I agree with you. Vote Hillary. Yes, MSNBC light. So, I guess my point is, I can't necessarily say there are 20 million reasons for them to take that particular tack. It's very possible that their political affiliation by itself is enough of them to take that particular tack. I mean, it's amazing. Cal dismantled him completely in that argument. Look that argument up. That's the argument where he used Nerf bombs. He says Trump dropping bombs on Syria wasn't really that big of a deal. Now, I always bring this part up because I want to show how warped the perspective has to be in order to say that. They're bombs. They're not Nerf bombs. If they went somewhere and they blew up, potentially even kill somebody, they're bombs. If they're destroying other people's munitions, it is a violent act to do that. If somebody did that to the United States, would the United States reaction be they were just Nerf bombs? Or would the United States flip out in the level of hysteria that these guys are flipping out over Facebook and Twitter ads? Think about what I'm saying here. These guys are flipping out over Facebook and Twitter ads. They're acting as if this guy is some kind of zombie and being controlled. And yet, one case after the next, a decision that Donald Trump is making is going against Russia. The wild part about this is they make the mistake of believing that just because Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin or Russia didn't want Hillary Clinton, that means they wanted Donald Trump. Meaning, Uyghur and TYT makes this weird assumption that Trump is their man, as opposed to Trump just being not Hillary Clinton. They're not Nerf bombs. There wasn't this kind of conspiracy where they were whispering behind each other's back and they came together and they say, okay, we're going to drop bombs on this, but they weren't Nerf bombs. You were in hysteria over Facebook and Twitter ads. We've destroyed nations in the past 20 years. You're in hysteria over Facebook and Twitter ads. And it honestly sounds like, listening to your channel, that you're talking about some level of escalation in some way. That's what it sounds like. If a nation had dropped an actual bomb on the United States, even if it fell into a baseball field that nobody played in for the last 20 years, what do you believe the response of the United States was going to be, considering that you guys are flipping out hysterical over Facebook and Twitter ads? I mean, come on. Be honest. It's called looking at the world in the way that you yourself would look at the world. Meaning, if I was on the other side of the globe and I was in their shoes, how would I view this particular scenario? I have no control over what Vladimir Putin does over his particular territory. I do have control to some degree, or at the very least I can lend my voice to what takes place here. And if you are positioning us in hostile conflict with another nation, and I think your evidence is shady at best, and I think you have political allegiances and political biases, and if we're being honest, even financial ties that push you in a particular direction, yes, we're going to call BS on it. It's nothing to do with Putin. It has everything to do with you. Own it. Own it. Yeah, I'm not going to keep this one long. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. This is nonsense. Somebody said, Dimitri, I think in this video, he named it TYT burn their brand, calling out Jimmy Dore for Russiagate. See, I don't know if this is directed at Jimmy Dore. I have no idea. But I would argue they burned their brand the moment they took that vote for Hillary Clinton, because they had a fundamentally different show after that. Again, don't take my word for it. And this is coming from somebody who have no ill will against TYT. They lost me tremendously at the end of that election, but there was no animus. I started feeling some kind of way with saying stupid stuff like Nerf bombs. I mean, come on. Come on. I just think that's such a warped point of view. We drop a bomb and destroy something on somebody else's territory. And the response of Cenk Uygur is looking at this like, that's not that big of a deal. That's a Nerf bomb. You bombed somebody's territory. If the same thing happened, would his response be a Nerf bomb? And I'm trying to get across this thing that, how are you deeply progressive when you can't necessarily see the perspective from the other side? That's what I'm getting at. He's continuously telling me how deeply progressive he is. And yet, one issue after the next, and they're saying shit like this, where they're coming up with this reason for escalation, where they're hating the idea that people add context to the conversations. I mean, shit. What are you representing? What are you representing? I understand you're a little bit further to the left on some of this stuff, but it sounds like you're trying to escalate. And I got to be honest, it sounds like you guys are just sheepdogs at this point. Are you going to vote for Joe Manchin if Paula Spurgeon loses? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. Instead of smearing other people on the left who are pushing back these patriotic individuals who are holding loyal opposition, are you going to vote for Joe Manchin? Are you going to tell your audience to vote for Joe Manchin if Paula Spurgeon loses? That's what I want to know. Explain that to me. As opposed to smearing other people on the left who's doing a better goddamn job of covering the story than you are. So I will leave it at that. You guys have an awesome evening. I think I have another show coming back. I just want to talk to my wife, make sure she's okay. I had a fucking awesome day. All right, guys. You all have a good one. Thank you.